Hello, everyone. I am Julianne Meyer. You are watching Own Your Wellness, and you'll have to bear with me. I actually have COVID. I think it's the first time I've officially had it. I don't know if I've ever really had it before. I've never tested positive, but this time I definitely tested positive. And we just had an earthquake. So that is just how important this show is and how amazing our guest is today. I'm going to bring him up to the stage because I don't want to waste another minute talking about being sick and earthquakes and gloom and doom, because we are here to talk about calmness and all things wonderful and how to live your best life. So, DK Warriner, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Julianne. Such a great honor to be here.
I'm so excited that we met, what was it, a few months ago down in Florida. And I was so taken by what you shared at the event that we were at and just your energy in general. And I just wanted to make sure that we had this opportunity to bring you to my audience as well, because you're just an amazing person.
Well, thank you so much for that, Julianne. I'm just being who I am, and the beauty of the journey that I've taken in my own life is to find that place from within where I can just express who it is I really am, and allow that to help and serve others and be of service.
Exactly. Now, I mentioned that we'd met, so I do know a bit about you, but our audience may or may not. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
I'm going to start right at the end, which is that I'm the founder of the Center of Calmness, and there's a bit of a story that goes along with that. I actually started out as a mechanical engineer, believe it or not. So I'm not the type of person that you would normally find in health and wellness, or even necessarily performance coaching space. But what I found through my corporate career was there was this, if you will, this soul that was lacking in what I was doing, what I was pursuing. And that all came to a head with a severe conflict that I found at one of the opportunity I found actually in Florida. I was headed down there, reached the point where I was meeting a new boss and enjoying a corporate operations strategy role for the first day. And there was just something about that first meeting that said, "Oh my goodness, there's danger on the other side of this door." And sure enough, I found it. I found a toxic environment, and I'm sure that the place is much better now. So I'm really not calling any attention to them necessarily. But at that point in time, things were rough, and it was my first experience in a toxic environment like that. So I found that childhood anxieties, panic syndrome that I had from the past, that had dated all the way back to when I was age 2, were all being triggered actually in the office. I don't know if any of your audience has any similar experiences, but there was just something about the lack of safety and security, the lack of, if you will, the lack of support in a group that was really intended to support one another to get the profits, to get the projects finished, and to allow us to move together as a family. It wasn't working out like that. So what I found was at the end of the day, there was a change that was needed. And that was the obvious aspect, but the less obvious and the more impactful situation that I found myself in was that the toxicity, the rest of it was what was happening from within. And it was a moment that I found where I was able to reach the ocean and just dip a toe in, right, and dip a foot in, and walk. And I walked into the ocean, and as I had many times before. But there was something about this moment that allowed me to release, if you will, years and decades of accumulated and amplified anxiety and stress, even for just 10 minutes while I was in the ocean and just enjoying that moment. And I went from completely stressed and even wondering if I could even take another step forward in life, to realizing, wow, okay, there is freedom. It's still there. There's something from within. There's a power that's available that I can tap and access to find my center of calmness. And that was the pivotal moment that allowed me to start a journey that allowed me to develop the systems and the coaching that I deliver now and help my clients with.
You know, you said a few things in there. First of all, thank you, because not everybody answers that call even when they receive it. So I just want to acknowledge that, because it would have been so easy for you to just continue on the path that you were on instead of uprooting yourself and picking something different. So I just want to acknowledge that. But the other thing too is you mentioned something that really stuck with me: anxiety at 2 years old. Now, there's a lot of people out there that are probably thinking, wow, at 2 years old, How did you know that was anxiety? So for me, I'm one of those 2-year-olds that had the anxiety. So I 100% understand and appreciate what you, I assume you went through. But I'm just curious, how can you recognize that in someone else in order to help them as well? Because I know that that's not exactly what you do, but I'm just curious if there's ways that maybe we can show somebody a little more grace or give them a little extra space when they're experiencing their anxiety.
I think, Julianne, the best way for me to respond to that is to actually take you through the moment that I found, right? And I want to be clear too. It's not like I was 2 years old, spiritually Zen aware, floating above the ground, saying, "Oh yes, okay, I'm experiencing anxiety right now" as a 2-year-old. It was a process that I went through where I actually went back, and if you will, regressed a bit to find that moment of where did all this really begin. It was a key part of my own healing and a key part of also the development of what I offer. What I found actually was, as I went back farther and farther in life, or actually, how would I say this, earlier and earlier in life, I found that in high school or in grade school or any of those other times where I felt anxieties, those were not the points of origin. And so I had to keep going back until I found an event where I was actually sitting on the back of my dad's bike. This is an old Raleigh from way back, right? So no safety mechanisms, no seat belts, really, nothing of anyway. An accident occurred, and there was an injury. It wasn't like that injury was a hospital stay or any kind of near death experience or anything like that. But the challenge that I found emotionally was that I knew intuitively actually that I wasn't supposed to be on that bike that day, right? As a 2-year-old. Unfortunately, as a 2-year-old, I didn't have the voice to make that intention or that intuition known and stay off the deal, right? So, in a way, I almost see the anxiety as my own mind's response to, hey, you had this prompting and you didn't acknowledge it, didn't follow through with it, didn't protect yourself, and so my mind said, I'm going to protect you. And throw you through this, keep you in this anxious situation, which will keep you safe, right? So, and that part, I know that's just a very personal story, and it may not relate so well to, but we all have a story like that, right?
Exactly.
Where there's an event that happens, and for most of us, we spend most of our lives suppressing that event. But there's a lot of freedom that comes with being able to understand, recognize, and allow the healing to complete from it.
I think it's fascinating. I think I'm a little bit of a weirdo in that I actually remember certain things that are even from before I could talk. So just off the top of my head, I'm sure that it's changed now from my grown-up perspective and all of that. But it's really fascinating to think back about those moments where we didn't feel protected or we did feel that anxiety and couldn't do anything about it necessarily. So it's interesting how your intuitive soul already, like your mind was trying to protect your soul at that point because you were only 2. I think that's quite remarkable.
It's an interesting thing about intuition. I feel that as if I could say it like this, as human beings, we feel that we develop our capabilities over time, and as adults, we are so much more capable than we are as children. But I've found as the farther I go down this path and down this journey, we actually are born with a very significant set of skills that most of which we forget actually over time. And so, if you will, a big part of coming back to calmness is reactivating or giving ourselves the opportunity to access our full set of capabilities, including those that we had as a small child, including intuition at a very deep level.
I think that that's actually a really good way to put that. So yes, it is. It's we kind of forget all those instinctive things that we learn, we come into the world with knowing and being without stories added on top of it to sort of dampen what we intuitively know. And because we're just sort of taught to look outside of ourselves for all of the answers versus inside. And I think that is, well, let me just phrase this in a better way. Let me back it up. Is that what calmness is for you? Is it kind of going back in and trusting yourself and the universe?
That's a big part of it, if you will. That's the decision that I had to make to really reach the point of calmness, to allow that trust to begin to to stop relying on the outside world for if you will, all of the input, all of the validation, all of the orientation, right? Because if we do that, then, you mentioned COVID earlier. I recall those news broadcasts when COVID first came out, and how jarring that was, and how riveted one could stay, into the television programming as it was kind of, if you will, offering the play-by-play of how the COVID situation was going, and the emotional content of that could leave a person in a high alert mode for, if you will, weeks, months, even years afterward. But the wisdom from within is take the information, do what we know is right to do, and then move on from it rather than stay dwelling in the alarm state, right? So yes, absolutely. It's tapping back within. It's tapping into, if you will, our connection with source directly. And I don't want to get too woo-woo with it, because calmness isn't so much about becoming a guru per se, or about reaching a state of, if you will, like a Zen meditation state which only a monk over decades could reach. It's about returning to a feeling that we've all known since we were young. And it's just a matter of remembering that we have this capability, and remember that we can always return to it. And then once we're there, our ability to shift into, whatever actions we need to take, whatever intuition we need to receive, or even how to respond to happenings in the outside world as they're coming to us, gets a lot stronger when we find that center of calmness.
So something that I really want to point out that you said too is, like, you don't want to get too woo-woo. And the thing that I like about you in particular is that it's a nice combination. You come from like this science type of, very earthbound background. So it's not that you don't, it's just that there's just more now. There's more information. You're more integrated. It's not one or the other.
Definitely.
And I think that there's room for everybody, no matter where they are on the spectrum of believing in whatever it is that they believe. So I really like that about you, because sometimes the message can get lost if it's a messenger that somebody can't hear.
That's it. And I love to have in a way, I'm going to celebrate my starting point, because I was, if you will, I was raised as someone who was a critical thinker, as someone who really saw the world from an objective point of view, and then later found the power in the other side of the coin, the emotional point of view, and the depth of, if you will, the depth of what a human being is actually capable of, and where we can reach with the heart, not just with the head. But I have both, right? So I can speak from the logic and also speak from the heart. And I find that most people really prefer to hear both messages rather than just one.
Exactly. And I'm different in that I started out with more of the emotional side, and then the logical side later. I definitely grew up in a different way. And I so appreciate that I've been able to integrate the two versus being one or the other. It's not like God or science. It's God and science.
That's it. Yeah. And a key realization, and without getting super spiritual here, a key realization that I found through, if you will, through a spiritual practice, which isn't so much, what's in my system per se, although of course there's flavors of that in there, is that I feel that we start by thinking of God as an external, as an outside. We think of ourselves as an individual, but if I can offer this concept of being made in the image of the divine, means that we're part of it, and so there's not really a separation there. It's how much of that are we allowing ourselves to express through our being and through our orientation and positioning in the world.
And I also like the idea of that our bodies are star material.
Absolutely.
So when you think about that and you open up your idea, it doesn't have to be all or none. So I did want to ask you this question before we go to commercial break. We do have a few minutes, but this idea of calmness, and I feel as though people think of it as a destination versus a journey. And kind of like health and wellness, I come from that space where people think I'm going to get healthy and then I'm there. It works like that.
Not
So
so much.
is calmness more of a practice, would you say? Or does it become more natural, kind of like driving a car where at first it's like, okay, I need to practice certain things. I'm just curious what your perception is.
I would say for it and I'm gonna use something I picked up in business school sometime back, which is probably not going to be very satisfying at first. It depends, and I think it depends too. You mentioned health and wellness as either a destination or a journey, or perhaps both. I think it depends on where you start. If like for example, if an individual's health is challenged severely, there definitely is a destination that's quite a bit different from where they're sitting at the moment. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And when they reach that point where they have that energy back and they have their vitality back and their body's working like they really want it to, and they're able to do the things that they love to do, then, oh, great, I've arrived, and there's the destination. But then there's the, now what? Once you reach that point, and of course, most folks will want to continue growing and experiencing and expanding that vitality. Calmness is much the same. Many folks that I work with start almost with, if you will, how would I put it? A lack of appreciation of how important it is to be in tune with where we are with regard to our inner peace, and even to the point of, are we checking in? Are we checking in to see what our state is at any given time? What I would call the base level of stress. And for folks that aren't tuned in and they're just running, if take for example somebody that's coming up or waking up at the alarm and running, directly into the morning routine, running into a meeting, and running through the day, and then by the end of the day they're collapsing, exhausted, to sleep, and then doing it again. Right, that person is not tuned in, at least at present, to where they are internally. So for them, there would be a journey with a destination, which is how to recover and if you will, reinvigorate themselves through finding calmness again, finding their center of calmness. And then once you found it, it's a capability that comes with you. It's in my case, it's not something I really have to work on anymore. Although I do have practices and techniques that I still apply for myself. I'm not immune to stress. Mm-hmm. There's a calmness that I bring, and for folks that when I take them through my process, they also have the same opportunity to just simply have the calmness and have that be a part of their life. And from there, then the journey gets a lot more fun, right? Because then we can always return to that center of calmness, and regardless of what's happening around us, we are at peace internally.
Exactly. And I do like the word calm versus peace in what you're describing, because you can be calm in chaos.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I like that idea too, because it's not just like a physical state, but also a mental and emotional state as well. And like my dad was recently diagnosed with Parkinson's, but he's had it for 7 years. So it's not this new information, and we've just finally had the diagnosis. And my aunt is, the sky is falling. And my dad is like, whoa, whoa, whoa. So and there's different ways to react, and there's different ways to be, but the information is always the same, and nothing's really changed. So I found that rather interesting.
What an example. Yes. Yeah, where, like you said, the diagnosis is there, and he's in whatever state he's in at any given time. And so the question is then, how do we want to feel about it? When we have the information, but we also have the moment that we're living in. And that's where really calmness is a supportive practice to choosing and being able to choose how you want to be in the moment, regardless of the information, regardless of what someone is saying is in the future. But it's what's happening right now, and tuning into that inner peace that we have available to us right now.
Exactly. And on that note, we do need to go to a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to continue this conversation. We're going to talk a little bit more about what it looks like to go from this anxiety to calmness, and what calmness is to you, because I assume that's a little bit different for everyone, because depending on where they are in the journey. So we'll be back in just a minute. Or maybe not. Welcome back, everyone. If you're just joining us now, I am Julianne Meyer. You are watching Own Your Wellness, and today's amazing guest is DK Warriner. Welcome back to the show, DK.
Thank you, Julianne.
So I'm thinking that part of the electronics is messed up a little bit, but that's okay. That's what happens. We are still doing this, even with an earthquake that just happened. And you know what I noticed too in this, it's kind of fascinating. Whenever there is a spiritually strong or centered human being on the other end that I am interviewing, something glitches every time, every single time. So I shouldn't be surprised.
The feeling of power coming through, right?
Exactly. But before the commercial break, we were talking a little bit about, this idea of calmness, and we touched on a little bit about what you do, and I would love for you to share more about like how people can work with you and what it looks like, because I know that you have some amazing programs available, and anybody who just watches, like, I want what he has. You just, even through the screen, it's like I feel a sense of calm. I'm like, I can do this. I don't care if I have COVID. I can do this.
Awesome. Well, right now, Julianne, I'm offering 2 different programs outside of direct one-on-one coaching, which can be helpful for somebody who's got something very specific they want to work on. And the first is it's actually a 3-session program with an extra bonus tacked on. It's called Embody and Calm. And what I do there is I take my clients through a 3-session process where, if you will, we're going through an experience, and we're going through I don't want to call it meditation, because that's not really it. I want to be careful with certain words that I use here, because the word meditation can mean a lot of things to a lot of folks, right? Mm-hmm. But what I'm taking them into is to their inner self, right? There's a bit of meditative component to it. There's a bit of a physical release component to it, and what we're doing is bringing ourselves back to that point that we know in our past where everything was perfectly at peace. And I go through a stepwise process for that, releasing both a mental, physical, and emotional, if you will, tension and stress and anxiety as we go. And even with some opportunity to release traumas that are embedded or triggerable as we go through it. Especially by the time we get to the second and third session, now we're getting deeper. And now things that are beneath the surface and perhaps not so easy to see or feel, we're able to access and release those in a way that's essentially permanent. Which is the most exciting part, where I enjoy the opportunity I have to take someone not just from a feeling of high stress or anxiety to a feeling of calmness, and then giving them if you will, like a prescription. If not that I want to use the medical terminology per se, but a recipe for how to maintain that calmness. But when they move through and there's actually been a permanent transformation, a permanent shift, that's where I know that I've done what I'm here to do, right? That I've actually transferred what I have to that client, to that individual in your audience that would love to just be able to experience and express calmness everywhere they go, right? And so I call this program Embodying Calm, because that's really what it is. It's finding again that place of calmness that we all know, but just have forgotten about, and then learning how to embody it, right? So that when stressors come in, so that when there's some kind of physical stress that's accumulated, or when there's emotional buildup that is being amplified or triggered by a new event, or if our thoughts are jumbled, perhaps there's a confusion or a sense of overwhelm because there's so many things coming in. Those are all addressed in the program that I have, such that by the time we're finished, we reach a point where we're actually embodying calm throughout. And once we're there, the beauty of it is we remember how to get back there, because as we make these changes, the brain, and I'll actually show my clients a little video of how neurons develop in adults, which is a crazy thing. Most of us forget this actually happens. But as we find these emotional states that we've forgotten, and once we remember them again, the brain will actually rewire itself to the point where we remember how to get back. And then once we remember how to get back, suddenly it's that quick, where we go from, I'm feeling some stress coming on. There's some kind of event that's causing a bit of fear, a bit of anger, a bit of something out of sorts with my inner peace, and we can make the decision at that point. Okay, I'm just going to choose calmness, and because we've gone through the embodiment process, we can. That's a capability.
Before I even comment, I just want to mention for those that are watching, you can find links in the notes, so that way you can reach out to DK, and also you can always reach out to me, and I'll put you in touch with him as well. But also, I'm going to pop up your website as well, just because we are talking with you. And the thing that I just want to say, though, that I love about what it is that you're doing is that it's not about boring. It's about calm. It's about, I just think about how much better it would be even in business. Because if you're calm, you can see more, you can have better choices. Because when you are in that fight or flight mode, it's very just survival only. It's as if there's no other options. But with that calm state of mind, you can take a breath and look around and see what else is there.
Exactly. And yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the word boring, because I think a lot of us would feel that the place of calmness, it is potentially a boring place. But isn't that more the case that we're so accustomed to being stimulated all the time that we don't, if you will, we've forgotten the value of silence and the value of being able to quiet our spirit for just a moment, right? Not to say we wouldn't enjoy staying in those excited states and having fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you have the ability to be calm as well, it's not that we're taking ourselves out of those moments of excitement, but it's a whole nother level of enjoyment when we're then in that. And the key being that that exciting event is no longer pulling us forward of its own accord, but we're there on our own accord, right? And in full control of everything that's happening. And when we're done with that experience, that event, we can very quickly switch to the next. And that's so critical in business, to be able to switch
Mm-hmm.
in a way that's efficient, in a way that doesn't cost us so much energy. So that, but if you will, by the end of the work day or by the end of the quarter, we can get excited about hitting a budget. We can get excited about making a big deal, and then afterwards not have to crash or take a vacation. Right, we're still in the moment. We haven't burnt our candle at both ends,
Yeah.
and from the gift of calmness, we're able to just keep moving forward, and if you will, immediately grab the next thing, without having to feel like we're getting burned out in the process.
I really like that because as somebody, I don't know if you know this, but I used to work in addiction recovery, and it was, people were so addicted to the highs and the lows that not using the drugs, drinking anymore became part of that. Wasn't even the issue as much as where's the excitement, where's the drama. And when you can learn to appreciate life for what it is, then you, like you said, you don't need all that, but you can enjoy it.
That's it. That's it. This is eliminating that necessarily.
Yeah,
It's about choosing. It's about having the choice
exactly.
instead of being kind of along for the ride.
Yes. Yes, I love that. I think of it as kind of like I'm going to go on the roller coaster and then I'm done. My life isn't worse because I'm off of it. I
That's right.
enjoyed it while I was on it. Now on to the next.
That's right.
What a beautiful way to think about that. I hadn't really thought about it before from quite that perspective. I'm curious, since you are such a calm person, and for those that are watching right now, I've seen this man in social situations and he's a delight. He is so much fun to be around. So it's not, and you bring like this energy that is just very welcoming, but very calm. And it's so unusual. I've never met anybody quite like you as far as that calmness. And it's remarkable. So I just wanted to point that out. Like if I could even get a piece of that, why not?
And you can.
Yeah, exactly. So my question, since I'm roundabout today, do you have, and I don't ask this of everybody, but do you have like a morning routine or something that primes you for your day, or things that you do? Because you mentioned about getting up and going straight into your day before. Is there a way that helps you sort of center yourself before you get going?
There is actually, and I do follow quite a few practices that I'm sure many of you in your audience know. Some 5 a.m. club type things. I actually was just part of a routine with a few, if you will, family members of mine that we all met on Zoom, and we went through several how would you say, several exercises of short meditation guided. We went through a cold shower, did a little exercise, and all that within the first 45 minutes of the day, which was very invigorating. But my practice actually starts before that, just at rising. I'll actually pay very close attention as I'm waking up in the morning, even before the alarm goes off, even before I'm choosing to rise. There's that last bit of what I would call alpha state sleep, where there's a bit of awareness, right? As we're coming out of sleep, we're not like under, but there's that awareness, and there's a peace and a freedom that's there, and also a bit of power too. And I find that's a great time to ask a question to start the day, to get a bit of wisdom or insight from, how would you say, beyond our individuality. And perhaps for those that pray, a short prayer is good there too. But it's a great place also to reflect and just find that place that's always calm, that never changes. And then as I rise up in the morning, then I'm carrying that in with me, right? And I'm maintaining this place of calmness. Sometimes I'll visualize a still, smooth pond, right? And I'm talking about a pond that's so smooth you can see your reflection in it, where there's not even a ripple in the water, nothing, not a droplet, everything totally smooth, right? And as I go into the day and I start there, then it's amazing the insights, the level of intuition that's available, and the absence of confusion, conflict, and the conflicting thoughts that can attack us in the morning, right? As we kind of get back up, and our programming that we picked up from the day before comes back and reminds us of all the things that we haven't taken care of yet. But I enjoy that moment of peace, and that gives me, if you will, an anchor point, so that when those thoughts do come, and they do, that I've got a place to address them, a place to organize and order those, in a productive way, so that the day is not carrying me away, but I'm stepping into it with intention.
I like that. You're stepping into it with intention versus reacting to everything that comes your way. I like that. Now, I kind of want to reiterate another point for people who are joining us now, that it's not that you don't feel stress. It's not that you don't experience things. It's not like, you just smoked up or something and all of a sudden you just like, everything's chill, man.
It is interesting that some folks will notice how I react or how I don't react to things that would stress most people out. So there is a little bit of that totally chill involved, which is quite freeing, actually.
Yeah.
But it doesn't involve any lack or loss of awareness. And that's the key, right? Is that with calmness comes enhanced awareness, not reduced. So it's not a matter of unplugging from the world. It's actually a matter of embodying the moment and getting more and more precise and fine with how much of our attention is in the present moment instead of in the past or in the future.
I really like that distinction. That actually clarifies things in a brilliant way, because I think a lot of people assume it as checking out versus being present. And it could kind of look the same way because most people aren't present. So to somebody looking, they might think that. Have you discovered that? Well, let me ask you this. I'm sure that you've lost people or there's been like these moments of grief. How does the calmness affect your grief?
I'm going to go back and share a story of actually my father, who passed away a few years ago. And, I'm human, right? Just because I have calmness practice doesn't mean that it affected me very deeply, right? The end of, if you will, that ended a certain chapter of my life as well as his, right? When he passed. And although we had a point of completion, and I met with him, as he was in those final days, and there was a kind of an exchange, like a nonverbal exchange of, okay, we're good. We've had our life together, and it's about to end. And there was a realization on my side, which created a bit of sadness in me, and a realization on his side that, okay, this is happening. Things are moving. But the first few days after he passed, It was I was jarred. I'm sure there's many in the audience that have been through this, where there's a disorientation, there's a strong emotional instability, and if you will, a concern of, okay, so how do I go on from here with a chair with only 3 legs? That's what it felt like, right? It's very wobbly. And in my case, I actually found my way back to the ocean, back to the place where I started my practice, and I spent a couple days there, not in the ocean, but making that connection, and particularly allowing my mind to just see the expanse and just remind myself of where I come from, and the divine nature that we all have, and just allow, if you will, allow that place of grief to pass, if that makes sense, right? And just allow it to release, because if you will, I see grief as almost like a bonded experience, right? It in a way, it's the feeling of loss. It's the feeling of being still bonded to something that's no longer there, right? Mm-hmm. But it's a matter of releasing the bond and allowing, if you will, it's almost like holding a big rope in our hand, right? And we're gripping it so tightly that we don't know how to release it anymore. Yeah. But when that point comes, when we have the courage to do it, right? And we have the place of mind and the peace of mind to say, okay, I can let this go, right? I've fulfilled, whatever it is I was to fulfill with that person, in this case, it's my father, with my family, or whatever the situation is that's bringing grief, and just allow that simple act of opening the hand and letting that bond go, right? And letting that pull of oh, I've got to stay focused on what's no longer there, and allow that to just go, right? And then there's a bit of learning that happens after that. At least in my experience, there was. But what I notice is, as I return to my, if you will, my normal life, if such a thing exists, that strong instability, that third leg or that fourth leg of the chair that was missing, the chair only had 3 legs after that. It was a stool, right? And it was stable again, right? And even though there was a few little things to work through, they were little now. They weren't big anymore. Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful. Oh my goodness. That is so beautiful. I love that. That is such a good way to look at it. Oh my gosh. I'm going to leave it like that. I don't need to copy what you said, repeat what you said. I'm going to mic drop it. We are going to go to a commercial break because we do have to do that one more time. Thank you for that, DK. That was exceptionally beautiful. When we come back, we are going to continue the conversation. And you know what? I'm going to come up with a question in the break time because I'm so stunned at the moment that we'll be back in just a moment. Oh, maybe we won't. Welcome back, everyone. If you're just joining us now, I'm Julianne Meyer. You're watching Own Your Wellness, and today's amazing guest, DK Warriner. Welcome back.
Thanks, Julianne.
So, thank you. So, before that commercial break, you were talking, and I'm just going to paraphrase, and so we can move forward. But from a chair to a stool, and how both. I mean, I'm just adding my own part in here. It was beautiful before, and it was beautiful after. It just took on a different form, and I really, really like that. As somebody myself who has lost a significant amount of people at an early age, or people that were in their 30s, 40s, and at most 50s, I've had a lot of experience with losing people, losing them. But this actually makes me feel so much better in a way about how to respond and be okay in my own life. So I just wanted to thank you for that, because that was absolutely beautiful.
Thanks for the opportunity to share that. It's a story that's near and dear to me, and yeah, I just love being able to share that and allow for, if you will, for tragic loss to be reframed in that way.
Exactly. It's, because, I was mentioning my dad earlier. He's about to be 80 and he has Parkinson's. So, I mean, we're sort of, and not that Parkinson's kills or anything. However, we're getting to that point where you just never know. And I mean, you never know with anybody, but the odds are not in his favor, because nobody gets out of here alive, not out of this meat suit. So my point, though, is that, I want to bring it back to while we are here, while we are living this life in this world. And, I'm just curious if you have any stories that you would love to share with us about how calmness has helped you, like being in that state of calm has either you or somebody that you've helped really change the trajectory of a situation or even your life.
I would love to share the story of one of my earliest clients, actually, which would illustrate this pretty well, I think. And she actually was an accountant who was transitioning to real estate. So she had become a realtor sometime prior to my meeting with her. But she was just still feeling the stress of the accountancy and all of the if you will, the triggered events that had happened in a very high stress. It was actually an environment that reminded me of my own. Very high stress, a lot of if you will, toxic boss subordinate type relationships, a lot of conflict, and she had been absorbing that for years. And so as she was making this transition and going through the natural stresses of what it's like to go from an employee situation to more of an entrepreneurial situation, with the uncertainty involved with that, there's a lot of things being triggered. And as she saw herself at a crossroads and trying to do, okay, do I go through a lot of training and become an educator of realtors, or do I stay a realtor and just kind of keep things as at the agent level, if you will, or is there more? She was at this crossroads, and actually before she met me, she was suffering some severe anxiety and stress, and actually on her way to get a prescription to handle that. So at that time, she's like, okay, I'd love to go through your process and see where I'm at after that. And we didn't look into any of those, if you will, those details of what she brought. But what I transferred her was my process of calmness. And then she took that and she was such an excellent client, because she took that and she ran with it. Right. So every day, many times a day, she would go through the if you will, the multi-step process that I taught her. And she was using that before hitting family events and before hitting work functions and before, taking certain steps in her real estate, either as a trainer or as an agent. And she was finding that she could return to peace whenever she needed to. Right. And she sent me some videos afterwards that said, hey, this is working for me. Right. The situations that would have caused me stress and would have had me in a tailspin before no longer do. And what's really cool after that, the rest of the story, is that over time, she actually bypassed that training element and became a broker and has her own realty now. So she was able to take that vision that she had for herself and not only make sense of it, which is, if you will, the primary result of having calmness, but she was able to expand it, right? Her vision was free. And then she was able to expand it into now what is a branded realty. Everything looks wonderful with it. She's got her own. And now she's training realtors in her way. So it's just such a great result from what sounds like a simple change, right? Going from high stress, going from toxicity and anxiety, and then finding the way to calmness, which allowed her soul, if you will, to express, the fullness of what she had to offer.
I'm glad that you said it seems like simple, because the reason why I mentioned that or want to focus on that is a lot of times people, myself included, are like, that's too easy. That won't work. It's like we try and overcomplicate as humans everything. Sometimes, usually, the path of least resistance is the easy, the way that we should be headed anyway. I mean, I use that term broadly, but my point is that it's simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. Peace and calmness in it of itself is not complicated. So why are we trying to reach it in a complicated way?
That's it. Right. You mentioned chaos earlier. And
Mm-hmm.
although it is possible to maintain order in a high complexity situation, the opportunities for chaos to develop actually go way up. When we create this this model of life that has so many moving parts, so many variables, and then we try to control them all. Actually, a fellow coach of mine this morning was just commenting that and I'm going to quote him directly. You can't control the trees. You can only plant seeds, right? And it's just super deep, right? And I think a lot of us, we see the trees and we're trying to control the way they move in the wind in a way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's just too much going on there to do that, right? But what we do have the control over is what kind of seeds do we want to plant? Now, what kind of impact do we want to make in the world? And then simply take that essence and believe it for what it is, which is the fullness of the tree already in the seed, and plant it. Plant it, nurture it, water it, and let it grow. And let, if you will, if I could say this, let God do the rest.
Exactly. Yes. To me, it's kind of like letting go of the outcome.
That's it. Yes, 100%, 100%.
Yeah, no, that's something I struggle with. I'm definitely a bit of a control freak, and that definitely stems from, I know exactly where it comes from, but I see it when it pops up. So I can go, oh, there you are. I see you, my friend. You can sit back down.
Absolutely. Which tells me that you're actually quite a ways down the calmness journey yourself.
Some people would say that, yes. I think, too, that I learned a lot of that from working in addiction recovery and sort of seeing having to be the peace in the chaos and having to be like the calmness that people, because if I didn't keep calm, nobody else would. That's for sure. So I think that really jump started it for me. But I don't recommend putting yourself into a chaotic situation in order to learn about that. I recommend that you work with DK instead.
It's a lot easier if you learn the techniques first before you go in.
Exactly. And that's the thing that I like too, is that there's techniques, because as human beings, I'm thinking about like all the times that we feel like we need to be doing something. We become these human doings versus these human beings. And, having a technique to practice gives us something to do. So I like that.
Yeah, definitely.
But, you mentioned something too that I really want to point out again, is that these are things that you would, that they just become a little bit more ingrained, don't they? Like it just becomes more a way of being versus thinking about, okay, this step, this step, this step.
Exactly. This isn't a memorization exercise that I'm into. And what I'm offering and what I take my clients through is an experience that actually allows us to tune into who we are. So it is, if you will, it is a doing, just as the choice of going through any experience would be a doing. But
Exactly.
it's what you do with that experience that's the most important, right? And what we do is we enter the doing, but then the question is, who are we in that experience? And then the next even more important question is, who do we want to be in that experience? Right. And then we add the choice of calmness, which adds that capability to the folks that are going through that, right? Where suddenly they may have come in with perhaps even a righteous anger. I mean, I'm just going to use one example, right, of a polarized emotion, right? They might come in with a righteous anger, and there might be every reason for them to be holding on to that. But for that person who's holding this ball of anger and they're just ready to throw it at somebody, and then to set that aside in an experience and just say, okay, for 60 seconds, 90 seconds, for 10 minutes, I'm going to choose calmness. I'm going to have that still, smooth pond in my mind and just be.
I like that.
Right. And take up the battle later. Right. And just enjoy the refreshing nature of what that feels like, and then be able to do that at will at any time. Right. That it's a powerful place to be. Even if it's something that's to be expressed. How do I explain it more clearly? Right. If the anger is to be communicated, calmness isn't about not communicating that anger, because it's there for a reason. But how do you want to feel while you're communicating that anger? Do you want it to carry you, or do you want to be calm while you're or have that strength of calmness as you're communicating, why you're so angry and why there's such a good reason for the anger to be there. Why not being, you mentioned control, why not be in control as you're doing that, right? And it's a different feeling, and it actually has a different impact when we're coming from that place.
Oh, I love that. It's definitely a much more powerful position. So yes, exactly. And people can hear you better because you're not all crazy. It's just coming from a place of strength and calmness versus, like anger, so nobody's going to back off quite the same way. We are almost out of time. We only have 30 seconds left before we have to wrap up. So I'm just curious if there's any final thoughts you'd love to share with the audience. I mean, this hour's gone by so quickly.
It has indeed. It's been so enjoyable, Julianne. Really, thank you for this opportunity. And I would just invite your audience to just tune in, right? Just tune in. And I'll even include 15 seconds of a little exercise and invite folks to just kind of run, to just do this for a minute, right? Run your forefinger and your thumb together and just feel the ridges of the skin, right? And just as you do, very slowly begin to tune in to how you feel. And as you're tuning in, I just invite you to consider choosing calmness just for a minute, just for 60 seconds. Just say, for a minute, I'm going to choose to be calm. Just choose to be in calmness, right? Let me know how it went.
I love that. Well, DK, I just want to say thank you so much for being with us today. It's such a pleasure to see you again. And for those of you who are watching us, thank you for being here. We will be back again next week on Thursday. Until then, stay calm, everyone.